Kansas City covering the Royals.
3 years.
Are you familiar with a radio guy named Soren Petro?
Very familiar.
You are?
Very, very familiar.
He joins 9 to noon, 15-ish minutes from now. A radio guy from the Kansas City market who Nordo knows and goes on his radio show. So we're going to have him on to discuss the Chiefs and the Super Bowl and everything. What do you think? What do you think we're facing around the corner
with Soren?
Mm-hmm.
I used to go on a show every week for an hour. We would talk about the Royals. A lot of Royals conversation.
Some Locaine arguments.
No, he had experienced the Locaine days. I had not. We used to have some serious backs and forths, and I respected him because he would push me and he was very aggressive, but I'm looking forward to listening back to that because I think it'll be very entertaining. But
you'll hear it on your drive back to Minneapolis.
Oh, it's a good point.
Next segment.
That's a good point. It sounds vitriolic, and maybe we need to bring it up next segment.
Well,
if you bring me up with him, it would be interesting to hear what he would say.
Yeah, I was trying. I'm trying to get into this segment, knowing you worked in KC, and this guy's based in KC, and I'm like, have you ever heard of him? I didn't realize there was history.
When I saw your tweet this morning of the people coming on the show, and I saw it was me, Soren, Florio. My phone did a little bit of a spin on. It was an interesting one, but
Soren. What kind of break, if any, are you nabbing before the combine? Is it coming up next week?
Yeah, I'm gonna go home. I'm gonna see some buddies and go back home and hang out with the family a little bit. But no, I really haven't slowed down as much as I been working on some bigger projects. Some Vikings related, some bigger than that.
Yeah.
So that's
looking for another job.
No.
What are we doing here?
I mean,
you cover the Vikings for the Athletic.
Honestly, I'm running myself.
Write a feature on Ben Johnson.
No, I don't have much interest. I'm running myself into bigger projects with certain things I want to do and accomplish and that type of thing. But it's been fun and it'll be good. The combine it's coming quickly. Takes a lot out of you, yeah.
What if Ben Johnson, coach of the Chicago Bears, what if Ben Johnson is ruthless like this? Pilfers the Vikes, because they have ample salary cap money, pilfers the Vikes of Byron Murphy Jr., the Packers, TJ Slayton, and maybe center Josh Myers, and his former team, I'm just going to take cornerback Carlton Davis, even though I have 4 or 5. What about that dagger? And they have more than enough money.
That'd be an impressive cornerback group. Jalen Johnson, Carlton Davis, and Byron Murphy. That'd be pretty impressive.
Maybe he doesn't like Tyreek Stevenson as much as Mr. Poles drafted him in the second round. Maybe he's like, we didn't like him in the second round, then we played against him and beat him, and I'm not the biggest fan. I need 2 veterans.
The interesting thing with the Bears is I expect them to be in the interior offensive line market, and I wouldn't be shocked if they're in the Trey Smith market. So how far they might be willing to go for him versus the Vikings. I mean, we're early here. Mm-hmm. These conversations will kick up over the next 3 weeks. I think some of the Vikings people are at the Super Bowl. Some of them are. I think a lot of them will return after the Super Bowl, and that's when a lot of those hardcore meetings, plannings in terms of who to sign, how they're going to approach this stuff will start to happen. But, yeah, the Bears, Byron Murphy, it's going to be interesting to see the contract that he gets. He's 27 years old, coming off a 6-interception season. He can play inside and outside. I wouldn't rule – I said this yesterday on the podcast. I wouldn't rule out – him, Bynum, or Harrison Smith in terms of them being back. Maybe not all 3, but I'm not closing the door on any of those guys. Mm-hmm. But I do think Bynum's number. It could be a pretty hefty one.
Well, Cam is intriguing.
Not
to
Bynum.
Me.
I meant Murphy.
Yeah. No, I got you. Cam Bynum is intriguing to me.
Yeah.
In that, it's not done. Okay, it wasn't done before we get to this point. Secondly, love the kid. Not enthralled with the way he finished the season, with some tackling angles or lack thereof, and just overall. And maybe I'm wrong here, but when I watch these things back, I have things I look forward to, and I think he was on. Now, Jahmyr Gibbs had a little to do with that, but it's more than that. And thirdly, it's how he talked in that Monday close the locker room down bit, where it's like, Yeah, I really hope. This is where it for some reason, it left me a little cold. Like maybe he has steam that he's not going to be here.
Well, it was kind of like similar to, it felt like the way that KJ Osborne spoke after the season a year ago. Now the different situation, like I want to be very clear. The roles that they play are very interesting, but I think part of that is because his representatives at Clutch Sports and the Vikings had very serious conversations about an extension in the lead up to the season, and that didn't happen. And so, once like the situations on both sides are pretty seriously laid out, and like the two sides can't consummate a deal, and then you go through the season to think that the Vikings are all of a sudden going to move from where they were. You're dealing with that's probably where a lot of that comes from. So, it'll be interesting. It's always a question of how much does he want to be here over testing the market and generating as big of a contract as he can. And then for the Vikings, I just talked about cornerback, but they have decisions to make, and there's a lot of fluidity around the defensive back group for this upcoming year.
Lastly, what just as of now, with the combine on the horizon, and I don't believe anything will be done with Cooper Kupp. If everything that popped yesterday is absolutely valid, and I believe it is because it came from Cooper. Cooper, Kevin O'Connell, Cooper Kupp, full off season to heal whatever slowed him near the end of the year, if that's even possible. Cooper Kupp, what do you think of all this?
Yeah, would it be great to have him as a wide receiver 3 or not really, but to have him among this wide receiver mix to be able to block and do what they're going to want to do in the run game?
His toughness.
It would
I'm
be
glad you said that.
That would be awesome. But the reality is, first, is another team going to be willing to trade for him? I think that's the first question in terms of his contract. It's pretty hefty, and so to think that this Vikings team is going to allocate more money on the receiver position at this point, with their other needs, that doesn't make much sense. Now,
great point.
If the Rams hit a point like in March where it's either we release him or we take on more money, then if he's released, then he hits the market. Then his contract value would be interesting. Would another team be willing to go to 13 million, 14 million, 12 million, or would he be available? It's interesting, but it would be great. He'd be an awesome fit for this team wanting to transition from being more of a finesse team in the way they've been the last couple of years to more of a physical team that they want to be going forward. He would be awesome in that regard, but I think it's hard to envision how that works out, especially via trade.
Safe travels south to the home of shrimp and grits. Tell your father, John, 9 to noon says hello. Enjoy the Super Bowl. And we look forward to seeing you probably at the Combine or maybe a little bit before, okay?
Yeah, that sounds great. Tell Soren I said, hey, please, when you speak to him.
How good would some grits be right now?
With shrimp and grits?
Oh, yeah. Well,
a little bit of cheese in the mix.
There's going to be some seafood going on.
100%.
There's no question. Thanks for having me, Pia.
Safe travels, my man. Alec Lewis at Alec_Lewis via the tweet machine. And don't forget about that podcast and subscribe to it. Alec does a good job with it, and it's all about football, and you enjoy football. It's the Alec Lewis Show. Super Bowl conversation with a radio type from the Kansas City market. But first,
the fan wants to give you a chance to put $1,000 in your hand with the National Cash Contest. Go to KFAN.com, enter the keyword cash. You might win $1,000 with the keyword cash. Enter the keyword cash at KFAN.com.
Sounds better in FM.
Hey, how you doing?
Welcome back to the show.
The show being 9 to noon at FM 100.3 KFAN. It's 10:20. Good morning. And Nordo, the producer of 9 to noon, has a friend in Kansas City who does radio. Eric joins him every so often. And he's going to be our next guest to talk about Super Bowl 59. And Nordo, bring in your friend if you don't mind.
Yeah, absolutely. Welcome to the show. You can follow him, Soren Petro, via X and 810 WHB's finest. And Soren, good morning. Thanks for spending some time with us.
Gentlemen, it's my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Soren, nice to meet you. And I think it's just wonderful that you've been rooting for, following, covering, and supporting Kansas City sports and the Kansas City Chiefs as long as you have, man, since like the mid to late 70s. And I'd imagine it never gets old when the Chiefs are good, right?
Yeah. I mean, I was born in 71, so I don't know about covering him since the mid to late 70s. I am old, but let's not age me too far. Listen, look, we spent the call of Kevin Harlan in the 2019 Super Bowl. He had the radio call, and he said, 50 years, a lifetime. Basically, talking about how long it had been since the Kansas City Chiefs had won, that it was a lifetime. I mean, they won. I'm old, like I said, in 2019, the last time they won a championship was before I was born. And, the last time they'd taken a quarterback in the first round before Patrick Mahomes in 2017 was Todd Blackledge in 1983. So there's like this, even though there was the Marty Schottenheimer, Carl Peterson years that were good, there was that pocket of success. But for the most part, certainly at the quarterback position, it was a barren wasteland, and there was no championships. One appearance in the AFC Championship game. And that trophy is called the Lamar Hunt Trophy, which was one of the things we would talk about here, is like how kind of embarrassing it was that, the franchise founder, the AFL founder, who the trophy's named after, had never resided at Arrowhead Stadium. Now, fast forward, here we go, 6 years past that, and the Chiefs have now played in 7 straight conference championship games. They've won 5 Lamar Hunt trophies, and they're going for their 4th Super Bowl and a three-peat. It is night and day to what it used to be to cover the Kansas City Chiefs.
So how quickly has the fan base become acclimated to it? Because the fan base is riding that wave. And when I join you, Soren, we talk about, excited what kind of season Sam Darnold is bringing the Vikings and Justin Jefferson and all of that. You're familiar with our market up here sports-wise.
Sure.
How quickly did the fan base become acclimated from lovable losers, root for them, but we're kind of resigned to a predetermined outcome, it feels, to now it's like, I mean, like you said, 5 of the last 6 potentially, 7 straight AFC title games. This team is on a run of runs, a dynasty in KC for a fan base that hadn't seen that for so long.
I'd like to think that we helped prepare them for what has happened. I remember in 2018, everybody was rooting for the Chiefs to beat the Patriots. And, of course, they lost in overtime where they didn't get to touch the football. Didn't change the rules, by the way, for the Kansas City Chiefs. That would come in. Josh Allen didn't get to touch the football. That's when they changed it to both teams getting the football in overtime, even though the conspiracy, lives for the Kansas City Chiefs. But I said at that time, look, everybody loves you because you're, the friend of my enemy is my friend, and everyone's enemy is the Patriots. One day, this kid looks like it's going to be multiple championships for the Chiefs. And if they are as good as we all think they're going to be, you're going to become the hated. You're going to take the place of the New England Patriots, and everybody will hate you. And I said at that point, you just got to embrace it. And we've talked about it a number of times. Look, put your black hat on, roll into town, drink their whiskey, take their women, and understand that you are not going to be liked. And just embrace the role of the villain. And I think a lot of fans have been ready for it because it came just on the tail end of the Patriots. So we saw what happened to the Patriots. I think we were prepared for it to happen here in Kansas City. But it's a shock to the system. We're sleepy little flyover town, Kansas City. You know a little bit about that up there in the Twin Cities as well. The coastal markets don't have anything to do with us unless we're doing something like this. And so it is, for a town that's always been like East Coast bias, has been a phrase that a lot of sports fans like to talk about, to get the attention, but to have it all be negative is still a shock to the system.
So it feels like in some ways this 2024 incarnation of the Chiefs a little bit different. There's been some adversity via injuries and things maybe the team hasn't had to deal with. They bring in Kareem Hunt, familiar face, of course, but due to the Pacheco injury, Patrick Mahomes acclimating himself maybe to a more obscure receiver group than he has in the past. Rashee Rice, not available for a large part of the season after his rookie campaign. What has impressed you the most or has excited you the most along the way about this year's version of Andy Reid and Mahomes?
I think the impressive part has been Patrick Mahomes, and I think it's an astute point that you make, and it's one that, listen, I go on a lot of different stations all over the country, and nobody has brought up the Chiefs' injuries, and I think that's the best-kept secret about what this team is. Whatever they were in getting to this point, people forget that Hollywood Brown went down in the very first preseason game. Rashee Rice went down in the third regular season game. They picked up Juju Smith-Schuster to replace Hollywood Brown right before the season began, and he went down about the fifth game, so they went out and got DeAndre Hopkins to try to replace him. Their left tackle was a revolving door. Kingsley Suamataia was a disaster. The second-round pick didn't work out. Last year's third-round pick, Wanya Morris, ultimately ended up proving to be a problem. They've had to move their all-pro left guard out to left tackle. And pass protection was a real issue over on that left tackle side. And Travis Kelce's declining skills are just a reality of a guy who's on the back half of his 30s now. There's been a lot more adversity for this team to face. And instead, everybody focused on how long can they keep winning these close games. And I think, people should have been looking at they're winning these games and they're down a lot of firepower. They're down a lot of personnel. They have Hollywood Brown back. Xavier Worthy has grown up over the course of a season. DeAndre Hopkins has settled in. Juju Smith-Schuster is back. They don't get Rashee Rice back. That's the one thing they don't get on offense. But now Pacheco's back and Kareem Hunt is in the mix. So they're better offensively than they've been all year. And then I think there was a really, he's not a big name, but last year they signed Charles Omenihu, and he helped be a part of a pass rush that was second most sacks in the NFL last year. He blew out his knee, and that was with him missing the first 6 games because of suspension. He blew out his knee in the AFC Championship game, so he missed, I can't remember if it was the first 10 games, 11 games, 12 games this year. In coming back from that knee injury, and they were down in the bottom 5 for sacks. But since he's come back, the pass rush looks like the pass rush of old. They've had a 6-sack game, an 8-sack game. Everybody's kind of fallen back into place. George Karlaftis had a 3-sack game. Part of that's because Charles Omenihu's taking up, attention from the offensive line. Chris Jones isn't getting double teamed as much. So their pass rush really got their, teeth back from where it was last year now to this year. And that's a formidable pass rush, plus Jalen Watson, who had done a great job. I wouldn't say he was L'Jarius Sneed, but he had replaced maybe 90% of L'Jarius Sneed, who they lost in free agency. He went down about the 7th week, and he just came back at the start of the playoffs. So whatever the Philadelphia Eagles play on Sunday will be the best version of the 2024 Kansas City Chiefs. That's the exciting part, is that I think what they are right now is better than what they've been at any point this year. It may not be good enough to beat the Eagles because they're really good, but the Eagles are going to have to beat the best version of the Chiefs if they're going to win this championship.
Soren, how do you know Alec Lewis, who covers the Minnesota Vikings for The Athletic?
Alec used to carry my bags to and from. He used to caddy for me. No, I'm just kidding. Alec, great kid. He was a beat writer on the Kansas City Royals beat. We always identify talent, and Alec Lewis is a talented writer, a hard worker. And I would see him out at the ballpark early on, and just his inquisitive mind and the way he went about asking questions and the way he wrote about the Royals, we quickly grabbed him up and made him our Royals insider. So we used to talk to him every week during the baseball season. And then we would take him at spring training to trivia competitions and make him feel bad because he was 19 years old and didn't know the answer to anything. So that always made us feel better as people as well.
That's a beautiful answer. Thank you. Hi, Alec, and good morning. All right, this is Soren Petro. He's with, 810? It's WHB, correct, in Kansas City?
Yes, sir.
Yep, 810. And at Soren, SorenPetro, via Twitter, if you'd like to follow. And off something you mentioned before I asked you about Alec, about the best version of the Chiefs right now, and injuries or the bumps and bruises all play into it, I understand. Do you think this version of the Chiefs is as good as the one that beat Philly a couple of years ago? And in turn, do you think Philadelphia is better than it was 2 years ago, but how much better?
Yeah, I think Philadelphia is definitively better. I've watched that Super Bowl from 2 years ago. The NFL Network does a good job of putting on any game that's kind of relative to whatever's coming up. So we saw a lot of Chiefs-Bills leading up to the conference championship game, but we've seen last year's Chiefs-Eagles game where the Eagles won 21-17, partially because Marquez Valdez-Scantling has a trouble catching the football as a wide receiver. But watching them last year, watching them 2 years ago in that Super Bowl, they've been really good for 3 years. But Saquon Barkley obviously gives them another dimension. And so I think this is definitively the best version of the Eagles. I think their offensive line, listen, I want to be clear, it's very good, but people are talking about it like it's this force that can't be penetrated. I mean, Jalen Hurts did take, I think it was 35 sacks this year. He's been sacked 11 times in 3 playoff games. Part of that's because he holds the football, and I think that's a weakness of his. But, you know, they're a very good offensive line, but I don't think they're quite as good as people make them out to be when it comes to the pass protection. But running the football, and with Saquon Barkley, they're definitively better. I mean, it was kind of a three-headed monster, which was, you know, it was a committee because they didn't have a lead guy, not because they had 3 great guys. And now they've got a lead guy. And so that presents a much bigger problem for the Chiefs. So I don't think there's any doubt. I think the Eagles' secondary is better. It's younger. Young people in the secondary is where you have to be. Having old guys with names is not a good plan. And that's where the Eagles were 2 years ago. There were guys that had been good the year before, but were getting into their late 20s. And you need guys at 22, 23, 24 if you want to cover people. They have that now. So I think the Eagles are definitively better. The Chiefs, I think, are not as good at left tackle. And I think there are a lot of places that they are better, but left tackle is such a key spot. I think Joe Thuney deserves great credit for the work he's doing. He's really solidified the pass protection. He's the best pass blocking guard in football, and he's a solid pass blocking left tackle. He really doesn't have the mass to be a quality run blocker. And so they really have to come up with some schemes and misdirection to be effective running the ball with him out there. But trust me, I don't know where they'd be if they didn't have Joe Thuney to put out their left tackle. They would not be playing in this game if they hadn't gone to him at left tackle. They tried to grab DJ Humphries late, and he got into one game and immediately got hurt, and so they just didn't really have time to try to get him up to speed. But he will be the 6th offensive lineman if they need someone. But that left tackle spot, they're not as good. Orlando Brown was better than what they are right now at that spot. But wide receiver-wise, I think Xavier Worthy does give them an element, a deep element that they didn't have really in that game. Hollywood Brown has that as well. We haven't seen him use it because I don't think they can protect long enough, but they can find a way to protect in this game. And I think there is a deep threat that's there that they haven't really unloaded. And one of the things Andy Reid did, we heard from the Buffalo Bills after the game that there were different, blitzes that they hadn't seen from Steve Spagnuolo. The run formations that the Chiefs were running and some of the option concepts they were using were something that they had not seen on tape all year long. So Andy Reid's got something in his bag of tricks. Is it the deep ball to the fastest wide receiver in combine history, to Hollywood Brown, who's also a sub 4.4 guy? Do they have a way to protect Mahomes? I think that could be the thing that balances that out. I would say that the Chiefs are not quite as good as they were 2 years ago, but they still have the best player in the game. They're good enough to win. If you leave them around late, they have the better guy to get it done. If there's 151 or 51 seconds and one timeout and you got to get 3 or you got to get 7, there's nobody you'd rather have than 15. It'll be a bigger accomplishment to win this time than they did last time, but they're more than capable. I do think the wrong team is favored. I think the Eagles should probably be favored by 2.5 points based upon the rosters, but I understand why bettors and odds makers say if 15's out there, I'm going with him. So it makes it difficult to have Patrick Mahomes as an underdog because he always seems to come through.
Hey, just a couple more for you here, Soren, and really appreciate your time this morning. But I love the way you hammered on that offensive line and just kind of talking about Joe Thuney. We're a little bit of a Brett Veach appreciation / fan club up here with what he's been able to do, putting that roster together and developing around Patrick Mahomes. But the offensive line for us as a Vikings team, we're always looking to get better on the O-line. I see names like Trey Smith. In recent years, Nick Allegretti goes to free agency. Andrew Wiley, I think both of those are actually with the Commanders now. But analyzing that offensive line with a guy like Patrick, who can really be everything in any moment, the mobility, the 40 yards he had on the ground against the Bills, you've seen it up close and personal. But how do you analyze a guy like Trey Smith as he potentially becomes a free agent? And how do you look at the talent of this offensive line meshed with the QB and Patrick?
Yeah, they've done a great job along the offensive line. And after they lost the Super Bowl, the 2020 season, when they got beat up by the Bucs, and they started, I think it was 3 backup linemen and a 4th lineman was out of position. It might have been 4 backup offensive linemen in that game, and just could not protect Mahomes. It was a bad matchup to face that Bucs front 4, and they really got beat up. And before Patrick Mahomes even got off the field, Brett Veach met him down on the field and said, "We will fix the offensive line." And they went out and they made a run at trying to get his name escapes me, the left tackle for the 49ers.
Trent Williams, yeah.
Trent Williams. They were the one who drove the price up on Trent Williams with the Niners going back and forth. And they finally bowed out and then turned and said, okay, we can't get the left tackle. We're going to get the left guard. They signed Joe Thuney to big money, and then they traded for Orlando Brown. And for 2 years, he solidified him at left tackle. Not great, kind of slow-footed, but a big guy that was at least hard to get around. And that solidified the left side of the offensive line. But then they went out and just nailed it in the draft. Late second-round pick on Creed Humphreys, the best center in football. And then a sixth-round pick on Trey Smith. And Trey Smith was a five-star recruit as a tackle to Tennessee. They ended up moving him into guard, and he ended up having blood clot issues that I think got. I don't want to overstate this. It's been a while since I read what it was, but anyway, he had blood clotting issues where he could not play at Tennessee. So he became a medical red flag. I know some folks at other teams that didn't have him on their board because of that, and the Chiefs didn't shy away from it. They grabbed him, and they immediately, from day one, had him starting at right guard. I mean, they loved the talent and said, this guy's a starter, and they plugged him in on the right side. And Andrew Wiley did a nice job of solidifying the right side, but Andrew Wiley was the guy they got off waivers from the Cleveland Browns. And so they really overhauled that offensive line and fixed it. And that was really, I think, what got them going and got them to the point to where they could walk away from Tyreek Hill and get 5 draft picks, a first, a second, a fourth, another second, and then a fifth. I think it was like 1, 2, 4 that year, and then 2, 5 the next year, something along those lines. And they couldn't have done that if they didn't have the protection. They knew. They said, "Listen, we got to make the move now on this guy." But having the offensive line, they had confidence that we can give good receivers to Patrick Mahomes. He'll make them look great. We've had a great one. It's been fantastic, but we've got to make sure we protect Patrick Mahomes. And so they did a great job on it. And Trey Smith is going to be one of those guys that unfortunately has just priced himself out. I mean, they always make a run at signing the guys they want. They got Creed Humphrey done in training camp. They didn't get Trey Smith done. They didn't get Nick Bolton done. They didn't get Justin Reed done. Whether they tried or didn't try, that's pretty much an indication that they're going to be walking at the end of the year. And, it's going to be another tough one for the Chiefs to try to figure out, because Joe Thuney's going to be going into what is probably the last year of his deal next year. It could have been this year, but they had to move money around. So, their offensive line will continue to be, in flex moving forward, but it's been absolutely fantastic. I mentioned the problems. It's been that left tackle. They've been great from left guard. Even Juwan Taylor, I know he leads the league in penalties and he lines up off sides, but he is still a quality right tackle, particularly in pass protection. And, he's helped solidify things. And the Chiefs will live with a holding penalty here or there, and they'll live if you're a push and pester, run blocker, as long as you can protect 15 or at least give 15 a chance to escape, because he's so good at feeling the pressure. And that's what they've really had. The problem has just been on that left side, but the right side is great. And there's a lot of confidence that Creed Humphrey versus Jalen Carter, there's no fear from the Kansas City Chiefs in that matchup.
Very last thing for you, Soren. You handle your business on your show, but I imagine it's got to be almost a yearly thing now that they're in the AFC title game or the Super Bowl. It feels like every year. You can almost play like a prop bet game. Is it going to be Sky Moore with the Super Bowl winning TD? Is it going to be McCole Hardman? This year, is it going to be Noah Gray? Is it going to be Justin Watson? Is it going to be Samaje Perine out of the backfield? Who are the obscure names that we're going to see on Sunday potentially helping your squad win a Lombardi?
I think you hit on one of them. I mean, I tweeted out around on the Christmas Day game against the Pittsburgh Steelers, all I want for Christmas is more Samaje Perine. I mean, he has been, every time he touches the ball, it seems to be a first down in a key situation. You saw that to end the AFC Championship game. But he has done that time and time again. A tough run on a 3rd and 8 where he somehow finds a way to get to, 12 yards. I don't think he has great vision. I think that's why they don't use him more and why they went out and got Kareem Hunt. That, they love him as a third down guy. He's their best pass protection guy out of that backfield, but he does a great job of understanding the scheme, knowing when to leak out, knowing, how to sell that he's blocking when he's eventually going to leak out and be one of the primary targets. I think he's a guy that is dangerous because people forget about him. Even now, Xavier Worthy is a threat. Travis Kelce's still a threat. Hollywood Brown now will be someone's threat. But Samaje Perine to be my number one guy, and then Noah Gray would be number 2. He had a couple of big games earlier this year, but we haven't heard much from him. And Watson is a guy, like, when he had to be their number 2 wideout, you have a problem. But when he's number 4 or 5, if he's going against the 4th or 5th best cover guy, he is a legit receiver that knows how to run routes. So I think any one of those guys, for an anytime touchdown, if you've hit all 3 of them, I would virtually guarantee that one of those 3 will score, and just one of them hitting, if you've got a bet on all 3 for the same amount, will pay for the other 2.
You 45 seconds, or any, and you get it all. So you like the Chiefs to win, right? Do you like it? Do you like the Chiefs to win in a close game? And do you give any credence to Philadelphia potentially winning this game by multiple scores?
No, because the Chiefs just don't lose by multiple scores. I give a lot of credence to Philadelphia winning it. My pick is Chiefs 26-24, just off the fact that Patrick Mahomes always seems to find a way to win, but I am a lifelong Chiefs fan, and so take it with a grain of salt. I never bet against the team. I will go ahead and bet on him because Patrick Mahomes is 17-3 in the postseason. And, you know, I look, and I do think there are issues. I think the Eagles, you can pressure Hurts. I think he holds the ball too long. And I think the Chiefs, if you look back, they've done a great job at stopping the run when they've really wanted to, when they've made that a priority. So I think it's going to be a tough game. And if it comes down to one possession late with, like I said, under 2 minutes to go, why would you ever bet against 15?
That was terrific. Thank you, and continued success. Thanks for the time, 9 to noon at KFAN, okay?
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Yep, see you. That was terrific. Thank you very much for that.
Oh, I'm glad it worked out. Soren's great.
You're listening to 9 to noon.
Welcome back. It is News to Nord, brought to you by The Casino, not a casino, but The Casino at Canterbury Park. And whether it's poker, it's blackjack, it's table games all year round. Love feeling the felt at Canterbury, having sips at Chips and tipping Derek Allen really, really well for a tall beer. And then I'm waiting for live racing to kick off, where I can play Dave's Faves and rock a pick 5 like I do every summer and make money and have a blast, bring the kids out and enjoy the sunshine at Canterbury Park. So CanterburyPark.com is the first spot to go. And the first spot we're going at 9 to noon is Maroon and Gold handling business in Happy Valley.
Ball comes loose. It comes to Patterson. He lost it. He trickles it out to Rigsby. He'll try a 3 from straight on, and he banked it in. Rigsby banks in the 3. As Minnesota pinballed the basketball 3 or 4 different times, and the Gophers are up 52-46.
And the final score
will fire a 3 that's no good. Putback is good with Ace Baldwin on the putback. He's got 11. There's 1.6 seconds. The inbound quickly to Patterson, and that will do it. Gophers get the win, 69-61 the final.
They beat Penn State last night. Our guy Parker, he was 2 of 2 at the line. We like that. Had a couple of blocks. It was a 2 for Tuesday for Parker. Brennan Rigsby, as you heard in that highlight, he was sniping with 14 off the bench. Garcia did his thing. Nice bounce back. Everyone was pissed off over the weekend in that loss to the apparently hideous Washington Huskies.
Really?
Yeah, people were frustrated about losing to the Huskies. And I haven't followed it. I guess
good.
The Huskies are bottom of the Big Ten barrel. I think they were looking specifically after that loss to Izzo's team. You had the 3-game stretch. It was like, wow, this thing's turning around. You get beat by 20 to Izzo. Well, at least we got this slump buster Washington in town. They couldn't get it done, but
that's good because it beats apathy.
Correct. People care.
I'm looking at it like, from an organizational standpoint or a team-wide standpoint.
Yeah.
Trying to Phil Williams, sell a little hope up in here. And it's like, okay, we would have preferred to win, but it's like if a tree falls in the forest or if a loss takes place in the forest and nobody sees it, hears it, witnesses it, or talks about it, did it really happen? So that's what's happening over there.
I'm sorry. Yeah, I opened up my phone and Good Morning Football jumped up at me. My fault.
Crazy. All I heard was, "Hi, I'm your stepmom for the day," and then
for the day.
And then all of a sudden it was gone.
You know, your dad's always away working.
Yeah. I think I actually last week said twerk mate.
You did say twerk mate.
Twerk mate.
Next up, they are hosting the 23rd overall Illini. That'll be a Saturday evening affair at the Barn. To the hockey team, they're back home tomorrow, but it was tough last night in Boston.
Pasternak with a shot, he scores. May have been deflected, and all that pressure results in a 1-0 lead for the Bruins.
Yeah, now that's actually all they needed, sadly. But they did get 2 more for insurance. The Bruins did. It was a 3-0 win over the Wild. Scoreless first. Team hung on as long as they could with Flower in net, but the dam broke in the second for Boston. A little shorthanded. Jumped in a couple of times to watch it. Just didn't have the pop, to be honest with you. But so they lose 3-0 in Boston tomorrow, hosting Carolina. And it's a Vox in the Box, PA. Excited to be back at TRIA. And we're going to have the head coach on, some cool guests, and really pumped for that. as they come home to the comfy confines, hopefully to win in front of their fan base with the Carolina Hurricanes in town tomorrow.
If you are fueling automobiles to fuel for a trip south over the weekend, yours truly, in quite low-key fashion, would strongly suggest considering tomorrow evening's game against Carolina is going to be that of the underwhelming variety.
Ooh.
The Hurricanes play in nothing but low-scoring games.
Yeah.
They just got shut out. All right, so Winnipeg's good. We've been shut out 2 consecutive. The Ottawa game, it's for yours truly. I could pragmatically look at that thing and be like, all right, winning at Toronto ain't easy, and you did it. Then you had the Fleury game, basically in his hometown. That was super emotional, and you shut somebody out. And then you go to Ottawa, and you're out of gas. All right, well, last night was strange. Hines after the game, and John joins tomorrow, 11 o'clock, Box in the Box at Tria. John after the game, I don't want to say he was chipper, but he was not super down on the effort, which I understand because they did have some wonderful chances. Swaney, the goaltender for Boston, holy cow, my man was really good last night. But the bottom line is, no matter if you had grade A's and you couldn't close on them, that's hockey. You still got shut out back-to-back games, and you're no bargain at home. So I don't know how I'm going to get into this with Hines, but with like Russo Radio, maybe Radio Joe in the first hour, or Staylock in the last hour. It just seems like they're begging for this 2-week Four Nations face-off break.
Yeah.
From like the 8th to like the 22nd or something like that. So they just seem to be a little mentally, physically, and emotionally tired. That does have some loser's lament to it, but reality and human nature get to win too in real life. And I'm looking forward to getting into all of that tomorrow.
Absolutely. Now, just a programming note going back to the maroon and gold, by the way.
What happened?
The Ben Johnson Show is going to be on at noon, so we can hear about our favorite hoops team at noon.
Yep.
And right here on your home for Gopher Sports, The Fan. Right here on your home for Wild Hockey, The Fan. We're going to have Box in the Box tomorrow. Looking forward to that.
Why don't you send a text from @Mad Producer 1 to the 64686. Washington, terrible, what happened? ? The first question. I had no idea Washington was bad.
I did not either until I looked at the standings, to be honest with you. To the Minnesota Timberwolves and podcastable, good conversation this morning, opening things up with Dane Moore. And I saw this come through from Minnesota Timberwolves PR, an update on the injury to Julius Randle.
Get it, Cam.
That after an MRI taken at Mayo Clinic,
be good news.
It revealed a right adductor strain.
That's great.
And it was confirmed via second opinion of the American Hip Institute. He's going to be reevaluated in 2 weeks. And further updates will be provided as they become available. So Julius Randle.
What's the adductor? Maybe I've asked this before, but it's like there have been adductor injuries en masse, over the course of years.
Yeah.
I just never had any idea what the adductor is. Got to be something groin related.
I believe that it is indeed the inner thigh. Mm-hmm. I'm trying to find. So I just.
The adductor's right next to the conductor.
Yeah, correct. Right near the pelvic bone.
Yeah, right.
So it's somewhere in that area, and needs to get better for Julius to play. But the season doesn't stop for Julius Randle. Mr. Vucevic and the Chicago Bulls are in town. It's a 7 p.m. tip-off. And, the Bulls, it's such a weird thing in the East when you're looking at it. The Bulls are like 7 games under 500, and they're a playoff team right now. So
wow.
The East versus the muddy West, 2 different animals, it appears. But Kobe White can play, and he's a Blazer. He's fast. Giddey's kind of that 12, 7, and 7 guy. Vucevic, I mentioned, he takes a lot of threes. But off the back-to-back, they beat the Heat last night, so maybe we can catch a tired Bulls bunch and get that W.
This game tonight, if they lose this game tonight to the Bulls, it'll be worse than losing to the Wizards last Saturday, and here's why.
Wow.
Because I watched the tail end of that Bulls Heat game last night. Man, they might have combined for 270. I mean, it was racehorse hockey up in that mug. Nobody was playing any defense. Tyler Hero, just has zero interest in defense, but that's okay. He's Tyler Hero. So they have to be gassed. These Bulls, man. I don't know what they're like on back-to-backs. I haven't looked at it this year, but they're not as good as Sacramento. and played Sacramento right to the wire, trying to get this thing right with Dillingham playing more minutes, the UCLA kid playing more minutes, trying to figure out the Conley situation, like where he's best and everything. But this, I'm not saying loser proof, but you can't lose a game. You already beat them once. You blew them out, too, earlier at Chicago. You can't lose a game to a team this far below 500 on a back-to-back, rolling into the chilly cornfields from a concrete jungle, and you're arrested.
Yeah.
So that's pretty much the diatribe.
I saw this Good Morning Football, and you're going to hear maybe from Kyle Brandt next segment, but Good Morning Football, Kirk Cousins joined the NFL Network yesterday, said this about taking a bad hit in his season, really changing after that against the Saints.
Against the Saints, got hit pretty good in my right shoulder and elbow, and from there kind of dealing with that, it was something I was working through and just never really could get it to where I wanted it. And so now that the season's over, you have the time and the energy to say, okay, let's get the right ankle back, let's get the shoulder back, let's get the elbow back. And if we can do that, feel like I got a new life ahead of me here in pro football.
Yeah, so that was, I believe, on the back end of that 4-game winning streak that they had. Everything was good down in the ATL. Everybody feeling good about Kirk. Apparently, he gets hit, messes up some stuff against the Saints, and the precipitous downfall occurred from that moment on, including, how about those 3 touchdowns that Sam the Man on the Fan just dropped on their heads when the Falcons came to U.S. Bank Stadium? Michael Penix ultimately takes over a week and change later after that game, and the rest is history, and the conversation has really surrounded Kirk's next destination, right? Cut him, and you can do the Russell Wilson game where a team will pick him up for a league minimum on Atlanta's tab for the 2025. I don't know what his future holds, but at least according to Kirk yesterday, that injuries certainly played a part as part of that downfall that we saw in 2024.
If Kirk knows Kirk is not going to be a Falcon next year, what we just heard potentially is the greatest clip Mike Florio from ProFootballTalk.com has heard all day. What I'm talking about is, let's go back to that injury report after week 1.
Oh my gosh.
Let's see who was or was not listed on that injury report into week number 2. So if Kirk O'Chains is trying to get the Falcons in trouble, and if people like Florio heard something like that, and now whatever he was just talking about is not on the injury report, we might have a little problem.
Yeah, so you would have seen it after that Saints game. What was that? That was... So you'd probably want to see elbow limited, arm limited, something to that effect.
Or elbow/arm full participant.
Final couple of bits for you here. Luka Doncic talking to the media yesterday. Commentary on his conditioning. Most have been jokes/internet memes, but the heaviness of the Slovenian, as he now chats with the LA media, was part of the conversation.
It's a motive. I know it's not true, but it's a motive. Like I say, I came here, one of the biggest clubs in history of sports, so it's a big motive for a long run here.
All right, well, not necessarily the most illuminating quote you've ever heard in your life, but the key, I think, to it is the fact that it's a motivating factor, I believe, for Luka, as basically he was told that he was fat and that the fat kid couldn't hang out at the Dallas Mavericks table anymore because he was fat.
Yeah.
And now he's going to go to L.A. and probably spend $250,000 on a personal trainer and a diet regimen, and he's going to be back in the game. Loyalty, also part of this conversation, as he was, it was shocked to everybody that he was traded.
I thought I was going to spend my whole career there because I think loyalty is a big word for me, and I was trying to stay by that. But this for me is a fresh start. I get to play in LA. The fans are amazing, and I got the ocean here, so it's a really big thing for me.
So he's got the ocean, and he's excited. I think he's going to make his debut potentially as soon as next week, is what I've heard so far. But LeBron, it was a surprise to him, too.
It's been a whirlwind, so I can only imagine, or I can't even imagine, how Luka and AD and Max Christie and Maxi Kleber and obviously Hood Shafino was one of our teammates as well. So
Max was good last night.
It's been challenging, for sure, especially for me. Anytime I've had, 6 years with AD, win a championship with my guy. Obviously, one of my best friends, obviously. So, it's a business, and you understand that. It's a business of basketball. We understand that, and I know he's going to do well down there in Dallas.
So people still trying to digest that. Anthony Davis, I think, has yet to. I forget what the injury is. It's not long term, but AD kind of on the mend right now.
Might be an adductor.
Might be an adductor. But still trying to digest that part of the transaction. Trade deadline tomorrow. I saw this. It's not certainly not Luka AD. Chris Middleton, you were worried about him. He's headed to the Wizards. Kyle Kuzma, now a member of the Bucks. Dave Sinek can go crazy. And then there are rumors that potentially Kevin Durant could be up for. He could be up for or open for business. I could say the Suns could. People were talking maybe that the no trade clause for Bradley Beal could potentially weigh into the availability or ultimately the team's focus on making a move at the deadline, which could include Kevin Durant. So those are a couple of things to chew on. Trade deadline early afternoon, like 1 or 2 p.m. And the Wolves, as of now, I thought Dame put it best. Like we didn't the surprise of the Karl Anthony Towns trade. There wasn't a lot of steam behind the Rudy trade. Those sorts of things. It sounds like, or it feels like from a capital standpoint, that the Wolves are in a tough spot if they're going to make some sort of significant move. But you can't put it past Timmy C. So that's where we're at from an NBA standpoint. Excited to listen to the Wolves beat the Bulls right here on the Fan this evening.
Chains knew exactly what he was doing.
Oh, my God.
I think so.
Kirko, chill.
So he said, got injured arm elbow after the first Saints game.
I thought it was the Saints game week 10.
Oh, week 10. Okay.
Yeah.
Wow. The injury continues week 10. You sure?
Yes. I believe that he took that.
Let's see. Because
that was the start of the downfall of the season for the Falcons.
Well, into week number 11, Kirk Cousins on the injury report, right shoulder, right elbow.
Oh, my God. Kirko, chill.
I thought it was into week 6 or like week 5, and those, hey, no Kirko here. He knows he's gone. He's going to leave them a parting gift by having Florio stick them by not putting him on the injury report. But no.
Well, Kirk's not that petty, right? I mean, he probably and Kirk seems like the type of guy being forthright and honest. The kerfluffle over how he stated things of when negotiations and conversations started.
Yes,
I bet Kirk felt bad about that. Don't you think he's like, oh shucks, like I shouldn't have said it that way. I'm really sorry, guys. You got all the chains for me here, and we're kind of having fun with this. I completely messed the whole, confarnit, I think was referenced a few times, but yeah, it doesn't seem like anything's afoot. I think it sounds like a guy that might know though that his time in Atlanta is up. So those conversations of I'm good, guys. Yeah, the elbow and the shoulder. That's the entire explanation for no touchdowns and like 9 picks over a 4-game stretch before I was benched. That's why everything was an issue there in Atlanta. But I'm going to be good to go for my next team in the spring.
Florio. PFT, about 20 minutes from now, 9 to noon, into the final hour of the presentation after this.